Hello and welcome to Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl, a mental health and wellness and semi unfiltered podcast made for teens by a teen. I'm your host, Morea, a 16-year-old girl from New York. And here on Balancing Act, I bring you weekly episodes featuring relatable conversations, personal stories, and practical insights to help you navigate life's balancing act and related challenges, and to remind you that you are not alone. Hey everyone. So, a few years ago, I was walking home with my mom from a swim meet, and honestly, it was one of those days where everything felt like it was falling apart. I swam terrible times at the meet, bombed a math test because I had a panic attack halfway through, and I had a history paper coming up that I was sure I was gonna fail. And I remember saying to my mom, I feel like I'm failing at everything in my life. In that moment, I convinced myself I never be a good student, a good swimmer, a good, like, good at anything, honestly. And looking back, I realized how much of that came down to my self esteem or actually lack thereof. But at the time, I didn't really know what self-esteem even was. It felt like this vague, unattainable thing. Like I had to love myself 24/7 to have it. And I mean, come on, let's be real. That was not happening. And so in today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Hannah Leib, a licensed clinical social worker, to dive deep into what self-esteem really is. And spoiler, it's not just about loving yourself all the time. We're going to explore how self esteem develops, the science behind why you may be struggling with it, and most importantly, practical tips to help you actually improve it and not just like the fluffy, just love yourself kind of stuff. Because come on, we need real actionable advice that can, actually make a difference. So if you've ever caught yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, whether you think you're not smart enough, athletic enough, good looking enough, or just plain enough, this episode is for you. So let's dive into it. Welcome to the podcast, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. So, just starting off, can you help us to define like what self-esteem is, because this word is thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, it's definitely thrown around a lot. And I think it gets combined with self love or self confidence. And I would say self esteem is really how you view yourself in the world, how you view yourself as like worthy of receiving things. Are you a person that deserves good things? I think somebody with low self esteem would think that, oh, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough for this, or hold that belief system that like they're just not worthy. And someone with higher self esteem would believe that they are worthy of things.
Can you have good self-esteem but then not have a lot of self-confidence and self-love? Like how do they relate to each other?
That's a good question. Self love, I would say it is conflated with like self care. Just how do you do acts of, taking care of yourself? And I think that you can do that and still not have self esteem because I would say self esteem is really like your belief system rooted in core beliefs about who you are. Like that, and we can talk about this more kind of later on, but I think that they really do develop early in childhood based on attachment. And if you're getting your needs met, do you feel yourself is worthy? And then I think self confidence and self esteem are pretty similar. I would say self esteem is just like, do you think you're a worthy person, capable? And even if you make a mistake, can you still accept yourself regardless?
The notion of accepting yourself regardless, I struggle with it, and I think a lot of other people struggle with it, because is it possible to achieve some sort of love for yourself that isn't tied to anything, and that just like it's just such like a weird kind of hard to grasp concept for me,
Yeah.
of just having like unconditional love for yourself. It seems like almost just like idealistic and unrealistic.
Right. It takes work. Like it really does. It can happen. I think that you may be upset at yourself sometimes or think I should have done this better. I could have done this better. But it's more of the way that you talk to yourself about it. And I think somebody with higher self-esteem would say, like, you know what, I messed up. I could have done better on this project. And like it sucks that I didn't do well, but I know that I can have the skills and learn to do better. While someone with lower self-esteem might be so hard on themselves and be like, I am the worst, in that self-talk of like, I never do anything right, kind of catastrophizes and goes down that negative rabbit hole.
Yeah, totally, and the thing is, like, okay, we're talking about self-esteem like it's just this thing that you have, like,
Right,
this magical force inside of you that guides you
right.
one way or another. But then how does our self-esteem get developed? What causes us to have high self-esteem or low self-esteem?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think a lot of it has to do with attachment. When you're a kid, kids can't function on their own without caregivers that can feed them, give them food, give them support, because a 2-year-old can't just be out on the street surviving, right? You need a caregiver. I think that too, kids see themselves like developmentally, especially from ages 2 to 7, not egotistical, but they see life through their own lens. And it's really hard developmentally to see it through their parents' lens. So let's say, like, for example, there's a kid and their parents fought all the time, which I see a lot in my private practice. A lot of divorce, a lot of like unhealthy parent relationships. So then you think of a kid who's like 4 and their parents keep fighting. They're developmentally not able to separate like they're fighting because they don't have a great marriage, there's something wrong. A kid, in order to seek that sense of, like, certainty and close the gap of, like, "Why are they fighting? What's going on?" They will just quickly be like, "It must be something I did." So then that gets repeated and repeated until you're an adult, really, where you have this thing of, like, "It's always my fault, I didn't do anything." It is, like, that belief system that gets wired into our brain chemistry that just starts from something like that, that then leads until adulthood.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy because it makes so much sense, and I guess even as teenagers, we're not fully into our adulthood yet, like, we're getting there, but childhood wasn't, like, yesterday for us either.
Right.
So, in terms of teens, like, how do our early childhoods shape who we are as teenagers, considering that we're not, like, done developing?
Yeah, building off that example that I shared, like if, you grew up in a home, even where like a mom had a mental illness and like postpartum depression or something and like not able to respond the way a kid needs, the kid will then learn. And Dr. Gabor Mate, everything he says about authenticity, which is like, are you able to be yourself when you're young? Because kids again need that sense of safety. So let's say your parents or your mom has a lot going on and not able to give you the kind of care you need in order to get that attachment, that sense of safety, you're going to suppress who you really are, like your authentic self. So I think that builds into being a teenager, right? Even mirroring of like teens, we know developmentally too, really want to fit into a peer group. Like that is developmentally, that's where you should be. You're individuating yourself and differentiating yourself from your family. So, like, your friends are super important. If you're trying to fit in with a friend group, you may suppress who you really are just to fit in. And again, if you're not able to be yourself, I think that self esteem is low because you're not really being true to who you are or knowing that you can be yourself and that will be accepted.
Wow. So, not only is it your parents, but then it's also, like, just all the social stuff at school too and all those different parts of your life. And so, I'm just wondering, like, how much of this happens without us really being aware of it? And does it come from some sort of tribe mentality? I don't know if that's the right phrase, but,
Yeah,
like, needing to fit in for survival?
right. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. And even attachment too, right? Like it's weird to think about that humans have been around for so, so long. And like kids need that safety, that caregiver. The kid will internalize a lot of things without being even really like conscious or aware, right? Because you're learning how to survive. So you're building all of these belief systems. Like a very common one with adults or teens, young adults is like, I'm not good enough. That's like built in through the wiring that was developed from early childhood and teen years. And the more that we think something, the more it becomes our reality. So the more you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. That's why this happened. That gets reinforced. So I think that a lot of it is unconscious and we're not super aware of it. But again, also in our education system, they don't like teach you this stuff, right? They don't prioritize teaching you the fact that, like, oh, are these any like core beliefs that you have? Like, if there is a class about how do you really feel about yourself, I think that would be really helpful so that you could even explore like, wait, how do I feel about myself? Because no one really thinks about that.
I totally agree with you. I feel like our core beliefs become so ingrained in who we are that we don't even realize what our core beliefs are, but then they just continue to shape our lives. If having poor self esteem is based off of core belief systems that we've developed unconsciously throughout our childhood and throughout like social interactions at school with friends. How do we go about reframing our core beliefs so that we can improve self-esteem? And is that like actually even possible?
You can't undo the past, but I think you can develop a sense of understanding of why. I think it takes a weight off of your shoulder of like, oh my gosh, like nothing's really wrong with me. I think I just built this belief system that was trying to help you because it's trying to find an answer of like, oh, let's say as a kid to solve the loop of if your parents weren't present with you, if there was fighting, if there was like if you were even getting bullied of like you're weird or you're, I don't know, annoying to close the loop, you're just like, "Oh, it's me." But then when you're a teenager and you can think more about, like, through the lens of other people, you can understand that, like, "Okay, it's not me, it's other people's things, and I'm just internalizing it this way." And then knowing about neuroplasticity and knowing that the brain can change, and that's the beautiful part about the brain. Teenage years is when the brain is going through a rapid transformation and your brain is, like, going through so much change where actually, I think that's a really good place to intervene because you can rewire the brain like stronger in that way because it's developing, it's like re-transforming during that time.
Wow, that's so honestly like inspirational. So like teenagers listening, if you have like poor self-esteem or if you feel like your self-esteem is not so great, there's hope for us. We can find a way to
Yeah.
get our brains to just rewire their patterns. So like what are your go-to skills and tips for teens specifically in terms of how you can practically go about rewiring that self-talk to combat low self-esteem and these belief systems that we've developed?
Self talk is the most important because ultimately you will be with you the rest of your life. Like you have to learn how to talk to yourself. You're not going to have your parents or your friend like throughout your whole life that will be in your head with you. It's you, right? And I think that's both empowering, but it could also be scary if you don't have a good belief system about yourself. That could be like daunting. And that's why people try to escape themselves and be like always on their phone or always busy so that they don't have to really think about themselves. So some of my go-tos, I think one is just being mindful because if you're always like distracted, then you're not going to even have time to think about how you feel. And I think there's a study that people spend like 8 hours a day on their phone, which is crazy. Like, even me, myself, I find myself sometimes scrolling and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I need to like think and just be bored and like think about myself so I can learn. So I think just being mindful, like, even if you set it in your calendar of like for 10 minutes, 'cause we can all do this. Teenagers can do this for 10 minutes of just sitting with themselves and being like, "How do I actually feel about myself?" Phone away, like, don't even have your phone. And then also, I think for the rewiring stuff, like, it's literally you have to catch yourself in those moments. If you're thinking like, "Oh my god, I did so bad on that test. I'm so stupid. Like, why am I so dumb?" You have to go like, "Whoa, hold on. Like, no, that's not true. You have to learn how to talk back to yourself because that's how you rewire your brain. That's how you do it. The more repeated thought patterns get reinforced more and become stronger.
Wow, that's so important and that makes so much sense. And when you said teenagers spend time on their phone so that they don't actually have to think about how they feel about themselves, I
Yeah.
just went, "Oh, I guess that's me."
I think it's a lot of people, not even just teenagers.
Wow, and but it okay, if we're using our phones as a way to escape reflecting on how we actually feel about ourselves, how do we push ourselves to want to reflect about ourselves?
Yeah, because it is like a weird concept. Like, I think when I was a teenager, I would have been like, what? That's weird. But it's actually really important. You're a teenager. So, how do you think you'd be able to do it?
I don't know. I could, like, turn my phone off and, like, chuck it in the other room, but then I feel like even getting myself to do that would be scary because deep down, maybe I don't wanna actually, like, pause and reflect on how I'm feeling. I know that at least for myself, in addition to using my phone, like, I have a million different coping strategies that I've realized through a lot of therapy are all a way of, like, dissociating so that I
Right.
don't have to think about how I actually feel. And so I think other teenagers like struggle with the idea of not really wanting to feel things, so they find ways of distracting themselves. So how would somebody realistically go about getting themselves to genuinely want to reconnect with themselves and not just try to escape through one way or another?
Yeah. No, I think it's like knowing, right, that like framing it. I think it's a lot about mindset. There's this one girl that I worked with that's like a teenager, and she said something super profound. She was really struggling with depression and had so much therapy. And then she told me, like, it's all about mindset. Like, it literally is. Like, she's feels like she can get up and do things. Her depression is just, it's not as prevalent right now in her life. And she was like, it's just mindset. Like, she's like, it's so crazy, but that's what it is. And I think that it's true. Like, I was like, wow, that's really profound. Like, thank you for sharing that. Because if she was someone that was like hospitalized for feeling this way, and now she's able to be like a pretty present person and experience all of her feelings, that's how you grow. And I think that it's not going to happen overnight, right? It's like if I wanted to have like big muscles or something, I'd have to do reps of bicep curls, not just once, but like multiple times. And the brain is a muscle too. So it's the way you frame it. If you're like I'll use my name as an example, like Hannah, I know that I'm a teenager. Like I'm not right now. I'm not a teenager, but I'm saying if I was, I'd be like, Hannah, I'm a teenager. I know that my brain is going through a rapid transformation right now. Like I know this. So how am I going to get better at like just being on my own and reflecting and thinking about myself in a more like, elevated way, maybe I can put my phone away and, like, journal it. And even if internally you're like, "Ew, that's weird," then it's like, "I'm gonna do it anyways and just try it and see how you feel," because it's all within you. Like, therapists can't fix people. It's all about you developing the mindset. Like, I give advice, I'm not gonna change who you are. I'm gonna help you learn these skills, but you have to actually implement them.
That makes so much sense, and there is no perfect fix. I feel like we're all looking for a perfect solution, and we
Right,
all want, like, that immediate gratification of,
right,
like, everything's perfect now because this one little thing I did solved all of my problems in
right,
all their
right.
entirety, but that's just not the case, and I guess it's so hard to accept that sometimes.
No, it is.
The example you brought up about a test and how you're like, "I failed this test, I'm stupid." That is something that I deal with, like, that's actually, like, a very realistic example for my life, and I know for the lives of a lot of teenagers around me, especially if you go to, like, a high pressure school or you just put a lot of pressure on yourself if there's, like, a lot of pressure from your parents. And let's say, like, you actually, like, do fail a test or somebody makes a mean comment to you and it's like external things telling you that you're not worthy and not just like you quote unquote like making it up in your head. How would you go about combating the negative self-talk that would come out from that, and how do you overcome feeling bad about yourself, especially when it seems like there's evidence as to why you should be feeling bad about yourself?
I think again, it's a teenager too. If you're trying to fit in, you're trying to be like accepted, then you will take that developmentally. I think what you're doing is amazing by having podcasts like this because I honestly wish that there was more education about it so that you're like, hey, if you failed a test, like you are not a failure. That does not mean you're going to be a failure the rest of your life. Like putting in perspective of like, you might get activated and your anxiety response may kick in, but you're like, wait, this is like one test. Honestly, I think sometimes these tests, like science, like when do I like chemistry and all of that, like math, algebra? I haven't done algebra since I was like 15 years old. It's more how you feel about yourself. How do you pick yourself back up? If you're like, hey, I failed this, okay, that doesn't mean I'm dumb. It means I can't do algebra. And do I want to be a mathematician? No. But do I need to do well to get into college? Probably. So, like, what can I do now?
Yeah, I feel like there's so much pressure on us. I my math teacher last year, she said something really, I guess, it stuck with me. She said that, like, high school is the only time in your life where you're expected to be good at everything you do. No other time in my life am I gonna have to excel at writing essays and then doing calculus and then chemistry on top of that, while also, like, balancing a gazillion other things.
It doesn't define you. And I think just like knowing that is really important to ground yourself and be like, also, we have calculators. Like, if you don't do well on math, like, you'll be able to look it up in your adult life. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean you're like dumb.
Yeah. It just Oh, it just feels like it's so hard to, like, look forward. I guess you can say it all you want, "I won't remember this test in 20 years. My life isn't tied to whether or not I succeed on this, like, chemistry test." But then, like, you still feel that anxiety, and you still feel like,
Right.
"Oh, now I'm gonna fail and not get into college," and you still have, like, those emotional breakdowns sometimes. There is no perfect fix, like we've said,
Right.
but do you have any, I guess, other tips for how you can achieve validation without relying on external factors or like external indications of success.
Yeah, I think it's like spending more time with yourself and knowing like, hey, I'm worthy of this. It's the way that you talk to yourself and spend time with yourself and really value who you are. And I think like I've even done this on my own. Like before I was a therapist, I put post-it notes on my mirror because you have to look at yourself and be like, I can do this. It's only you. It's like your mindset. If you're only seeking for other people's approval, you're never going to learn how to do it by yourself. So, if you're a teenager and you know that your brain is going through this rapid transformation, knowing that and being like, okay, I'm going to start to develop this positive self talk now so that when I'm an adult and I'm like 35 and I have this high powered job and I missed something, a deadline, I'm not going to beat myself up forever. I'm going to say, you know what? That's okay. Like, I'm going to get through it, but you have to learn it now. So doing that and then also knowing that like if you put so much value on a test, maybe you're not thinking about the other things that you're also good at and what matter to you. Like you're good at soccer or you have a lot of friends, so you're social. Those are all really great things too. It's not just about the test.
I totally agree. And I also feel like I'm somebody who like places so much value on external validation. And I feel like, okay, so I have this like really awful pattern of being like, I failed this test, but it doesn't matter because I'm good at other stuff. Like, I'm good at my sport, but then, oh no, I have a terrible sports performance. So now not only am I bad at my test, but I'm terrible at my sport. Oh, but it doesn't matter because I am really good at, like, speaking in class. Oh, wait, now I just fumbled over all my words, so I'm bad at my test, I'm bad at my sports, and now I have no confidence in class. And so it sometimes feels like everything's, like, crumbling underneath you because, like, you're holding on to all these external things even when you tell yourself, "Hey, but I'm good at other things." So do you think that like, I think I brought it up at the beginning of our conversation, but is it possible to ever achieve unconditional acceptance of yourself? Is that realistic? Is that possible?
I think it is possible. I think also knowing that like you said 16, so it takes time to develop that, right? Like it takes a lot of time and I think it takes a lot of effort and being really mindful because the way even you were just giving those examples, it's like, okay, but do you trust yourself that you can move forward and that you'll do better at soccer next week or you'll practice? If you're just going in a loop of like, oh my God, I suck at everything, then that thought pattern is just getting reinforced. But if you're like, hey, you know what? That was a rough week. Just was. That sucks. Okay. Like, it just takes time, but it's all about the mindset and you learning how to, like, reframe the thought patterns.
Yeah, wow. I guess it's like self-sabotage almost, like, just telling yourself you're gonna fail and then you do fail.
Right.
That's wow. It sounds, like, funny and cheesy to, like, look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I love you
I
unconditionally,
know.
it's gonna be okay." But then I guess, like, what's the harm in trying that too? Like,
Nothing.
we're
There's no harm.
yeah, so I guess I'll start doing that, I'll start actually committing to
Do
telling
it.
myself yeah, and if you're listening, let's do this together, let's commit to doing those cheesy things of self-love.
If you don't do it, then you're never gonna, like, learn that, "Hey, this actually could work, and I actually wanna talk to myself kindly." One more thing is if you have a picture of yourself when you were, like, a child, like 3 or 4, and you're like, "Why would little me, like, talk to myself like that?" When you're saying, "I'm bad at this, I'm bad at this," would you want her to hear that, that little part of you that's still there, like the 3-year-old self? So I think just even having a picture of it and being like, "How would I want her to talk to herself?"
I have a picture of little me as my phone, like, home screen,
No.
lock screen thing, 'cause it just it I mean, I can't be mean to her. Who can be mean to the little
Right.
baby,
And
like,
that was
that there
you.
used to be? I know. You gotta be nice to yourself. You're still that little cute, like, baby. So,
Yeah.
I guess, what does good self-esteem ultimately look like? Even though you've said that it's not impossible, I still feel like it'd be very hard for at least me to achieve perfect self-esteem and constant belief in myself. So what would you say is like good self-esteem? What amount of self-esteem could we realistically aim for, and what would it look like?
Yeah, I think it's like, do you trust yourself? Let's say you're going to a party and you don't know anyone. Do you trust that, like, if it's uncomfortable, that you'll still be able to be there and just like try it out? And do you trust that you're able to talk to someone new? Because if you're just in your head, you don't trust that you're able to like function, even if it's uncomfortable, even if like no one talks to you. You have to build that sense of like, okay, whatever. Trust that no matter what, you'll be okay and you'll appreciate who you are and accept even if you make a mistake. And I think that like it sounds cheesy, it sounds this, but it really is like the mindset. If you're so hard on yourself, then you're never going to learn that you can be kind to yourself. You don't even know that yet if you haven't tried it.
Yeah, it's worth just trying it. It sounds crazy and it sounds out there, and if you've been struggling with low self-esteem, like I have for a bit, like, even if it's something you're working on, it just seems so hard, but it's worth trying.
Just to add, I think that self-esteem and self-confidence, especially for young women, I feel like, oh, but we don't want to be too cocky or is it selfish to have self-esteem? And that is a really, I think, unhelpful way to think about it because you can like yourself and be happy with who you are and also be a really wonderful friend. I think it makes you a better friend, daughter, person. High self-esteem doesn't mean like, I'm the best. Oh my God, I'm so great. And like saying stuff like that. A healthy level is feeling good about yourself and then also connecting with the people most important to you because you're able to connect better because you are kind to yourself too. Like Oprah even says that. She's like, you got to take care of yourself in order to be the best version of yourself.
That's such a good point that you just brought up about, like, not wanting to seem too cocky and, like, that getting in the way of people believing that they're worthy because it's like, I wanna be confident, but I don't want other people to feel like I'm arrogant and just
Right.
being, like, full of myself, so that's definitely, like, some serious internal conflict over
Right. Right.
self-esteem.
Right.
So if that's what you're afraid of, don't worry, you can still love yourself. At least accept yourself and know that it's gonna be okay, and I guess it's really about trust, like, trusting yourself, like you
Right.
said.
Right.
It's not, like, unconditional, lovey-dove, kissy-kissy, just that trust. Wow. So, if people wanna learn more about the work that you're doing or wanna connect with you, where can they go?
Yeah, I have an Instagram and TikTok. Speaking of social media, but hopefully mine is a little bit more uplifting of the posts I make. But it's called Grow and Glow Child Therapy. And then my website is growandglowchildtherapyla.com. I'm in California, like LA area.
And I will link that in the description for people to check out. So, this is just something I like to ask everyone who comes on. So, if you had one piece of advice for your teenage self, what would it be?
That's a really good question. Oh my gosh, I've cared so much what other people thought about me, like I definitely did. I would just say like you don't have to please other people. Like try to think about what you want in this moment instead of like how can you please other people because I think that message shapes a lot of the way you go in like romantic relationships. Like instead of thinking does he or she like me? Do I like them? Just like taking that back of like knowing that you have to think about you too.
Yeah. You have to think about you too. I really love that. You gotta trust yourself, love yourself. It's not just about, do they like me? Because ultimately, like you said, you're with you for the rest of your life.
Right,
So you
right.
have to trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This has been absolutely amazing. I learned so much from this conversation, and I feel like you really pointed out some things that were like super obvious and make a lot of sense, but that I hadn't actually realized.
Oh,
So thank
that was
you.
great. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. So let's quickly recap some key takeaways because this was a great, super meaningful, and insightful episode, at least for me. So, first of all, self esteem is not about loving yourself 24/7. It's about having trust in yourself and knowing your worth and believing that even if you fail or face rejection, you can pick yourself up and keep going. So it's not about being perfect and loving yourself unconditionally. It's more about resilience and trust. Second, our self esteem often develops subconsciously when we're really little. So the way that we were raised and the messages that we absorb shape our thought patterns, and sometimes we blame ourselves as a defense mechanism, and those beliefs can stick with us as we get older and make us feel unworthy or like it's our fault. So, the good news, we can change those thought patterns. Like Hannah said, as teenagers, our brains are still developing, and thanks to neuroplasticity, we have the power to rewire those beliefs. So, it's not an overnight fix, and it takes a lot of commitment, like setting aside 10 minutes a day to reflect on how we truly feel about ourselves and challenging negative self talk when it comes up. And that can be scary, but it's worth shot. And one really powerful tip Hannah shared was to keep a picture of your younger self as a reminder to treat yourself with kindness. Like, would you talk to that little kid the way you're talking to yourself right now? Probably not. So just start catching those moments of self doubt and remind yourself that one failure does not define me and that you can pick yourself up and keep going because, like Hannah said, the more you say something, the more those thought patterns are reinforced. And then you're actually going to start to believe it. So, finally, we need to stop tying our self esteem to external validation. And it's tough. And things like grades, sports, or other people's opinions, like, can't define our worth, but too often they do end up defining our worth. So, true self esteem comes from trusting yourself no matter what. Not loving yourself, you don't have to completely love yourself. You just gotta trust yourself a little bit more. So, after this episode, I will be committing to catching my own moments of self doubt and reframing them, and I challenge you to do the same. Together, we can work on reminding ourselves that we are enough and that we can keep going even when it feels hard. Self esteem is a journey and it is not perfect and it does not happen overnight, but we're all worth the effort that it takes to build. So, thanks again for tuning in to this episode. Let's keep working on self esteem together, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone it could help, please feel free to share it with your loved ones or on social media. You can find us on our Instagram at balancingact.podcast and on our website balancingact.life. So please consider checking those out and giving our Instagram a follow. If you want to support the podcast, please consider subscribing to the podcast or leaving us a hopefully good rating on whatever platform you're listening to this on, because that would really be invaluable. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic or person for a future episode, please reach out to us through social media, our website, or email, which you can find linked below. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, life's a balancing act and sometimes you're gonna fall on your face, but you're not alone.